Why are people wanting to get crushed by rocks in the Bible? No, seriously, check this out. In Revelation 6:16 it says, "And they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb." This is about the end times great day of the Lord, also known as the tribulation. It would be so horrible that people would rather be crushed by rocks than endure it. We see this verse, and the previous ones as well, mirror the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24. They both have the same cataclysmic events like blood moon, sun turned to darkness, earthquakes, and such things like that. Luke also gives the exact same account as well, but not specifically Luke's account in the Olivet Discourse, but Luke 23. This is Jesus on the way to the cross. He's addressing the daughters of Jerusalem that are crying for him. He says, "Don't weep for me, but for you and your children." And he tells them, you're going to say to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us, because they were going to experience the end times and the tribulation. He's telling them they're going to be the ones experiencing what Hosea 10:8 says, which is the exact same thing. They'll say to the mountains, cover us, to the hills, fall on us. Oh, Israel. It's all towards Israel, even in the Old Testament. Where do you think Revelation, Matthew, Luke, the Olivet Discourse, where do you think these writers got the idea of this judgment coming with the rocks falling? They got it from the Old Testament prophets. Nothing's new in the Old Testament. They always took it from what the Old Testament prophets already said and expanded upon it. So in Revelation 16, Olivet Discourse, and Jesus talking to the daughters of Jerusalem, and in Hosea, are these all different events? No, they're not all different events. They're one event for one specific people. If you go back to Hosea's account in Hosea 10, you can see that it's clearly talking about a covenantal punishment for Israel for disobeying God. Old covenant Israel was constantly unfaithful to God, pursuing idols, pursuing things that they weren't supposed to, basically putting other things before God, intermarrying, all this fun stuff. So God constantly disciplined them and exiled them and made punishments for them because they needed to turn to God and worship him alone. We can't take the language of the Old Testament, rip it out of its context, or forget about it completely, and then pretend like the New Testament quotation has nothing to do with what the Old Testament was talking about. This isn't a way to interpret the Bible. If the Old Testament said something and someone quotes the Old Testament, they're meaning it in the same way as what the Old Testament said. There's no reason for them to change the meaning. And if they did, they would have clarified that they were changing the meaning of it or expanding upon what they're talking about. The New Testament authors didn't pull this phrase of the rocks falling on people out of a hat just randomly. No, he pulled it directly from the Old Testament. And he wouldn't change the meaning. It always meant covenantal judgment on Israel. And this judgment was specifically for the first century Jews. Old covenant Israel was a rightful judgment because they willingly denied Christ, and not only denied him, but killed him. This pretty massive blunder cost Israel their covenantal status, so that only the remnant of Israel, which were Jews, would inherit the covenant, and it would be the new covenant. And then after that, praise the Lord for this, but the Gentiles would then be grafted into that new covenant that the first Jews, the remnant, would be a part of. This isn't replacing Israel, because true Israel has always been people of faith. If you read Galatians 3, it talks about who is a true son of Abraham. Well, the true sons of Abraham are sons of faith. That's who the true sons are. It's not what your bloodline is, like the Jews of that day thought, and many modern Jews think today. It was always by faith. Many people heard the song growing up, Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham. Maybe you don't know it, whatever, look it up. But basically that's saying anybody that's a Christian is a son of Abraham spiritually. And that's what Galatians is all about. You find it all throughout the Bible too. It's not just in Galatians. I'm just saying that's a pretty obvious part. So we are currently in the new covenant age, the kingdom age, where everybody is just coming to Christ right now. We're not waiting for tribulation. It's already in the past because it was a covenantal judgment on Israel. You may have a trillion questions. That's okay. You may even have more objections. That's okay too. If you want to know more information, feel free to follow me Or if you want to look at people like Don Preston, William Bell, Michael Sullivan, other people like that, just look them up on YouTube, look up their debates. They go through the Old Testament and show you what the Old Testament means in the New Testament and how the New Testament authors always refer to the same thing that the Old Testament did. Talk to any pastor, they'll say the same thing, they just won't apply it consistently. I hope you guys found this helpful. Follow for more, and God bless.